After all that, I forgot I was also going to talk about the Elon Musk meme. We did some prep. Well, prep is being very generous for what I've done. We did some thinking. We did some considerations in what we may cover tonight, this morning, however you want to phrase it. And we're going to go back to that old deep well of the Australian Christian lobby. It is election season here in Australia, and that comes with it a deep desire to ignore everything happening with relations to the elections, and so I'm already fairly confident in which way my votes are going. But that nevertheless does not mean that the periphery of all the noise and violence happening in the discourse surrounding it escapes me. Unfortunately, I'm very much aware, despite my best efforts. But hey, we'll have a bit of a dig at some of the deep, dark recesses and have a chat about it tonight. As I was sitting down, I obviously spent a little bit too long on saying I'm live, and the stream is starting, and then I got distracted trying to get the chat working on YouTube. I should put a tweet out. Live with some rambling about ACL and Elon Musk et al. That's not how you spell rambling. It's not really a real word anyway, is it? We'll put a dot there too. What's a funny GIF? What's an anime this season? Spy Family. I mean, I could use a capture from the thingamabob, but hey. Let's be weeby since we're not really taking this whole thing particularly seriously. So here we go. By putting on glasses. All right, we've tweeted. We've done the bare minimum. Maybe not even that. Oh, and then modern day debate stuff as well. Okay, maybe we do have a stream tonight. All right. Don't touch anything. I've tried downloading a few extensions that theoretically would... Oh, maybe it works. So I've mentioned this on stream a few times. Beyond the fact that obviously my level of sight is fairly bad, but because of that, it becomes relatively difficult for me to follow things like live chat. So, when chat does happen, it's considered polite for people that are streaming to acknowledge the chat, interact with the chat, and all that sort of stuff. Not to mention that it's fun and it's, I think adds a lot to the experience personally, because I'm here to do something with my life. I don't know. Twitch is fantastic for it. On Twitch, because it is an IRC client, as far as I'm aware, and the backbone of the chat is run through IRC. It's very easy for people to develop apps that will hook into the IRC and then provides limitless customization. So when I'm on Twitch, I can easily read my chat. I can set things like notification sounds. I can set text to speech, so it will actually read out chat if I wanted to have that functionality. So I wouldn't even need to see. It provides me with all the features I need to make chat as accessible as I need it to be. YouTube, nothing. What I sort of have been trying to work with on YouTube is basically zooming in on the web page, like the browser, with the chat popped out. Unfortunately, I have yet to find and maybe I need to do better Googling. I've just realized I haven't Googled specifically how to detach a browser popped out window from another window. But the issue is that, like, if I'm running it in Chrome and I zoom in on the chat to make the chat visible, all my windows where I might be streaming videos from YouTube or looking at articles and stuff, all of that stuff will zoom in to the same degree. And to get it to the level of zoom that I'd need for it to be relatively comfortable to read, it basically breaks the ability for the browsers to be used for websites and videos and stuff. Which is really frustrating because text size is such a easy thing to unlock and provide customization to users. There seems to have been things where they, the solutions that have been posted are just change the default font size in your browser settings. And I've done that on multiple browsers and have yet to find a browser where that translates over to YouTube chat. Like at the moment, the chat's still tiny as well. But, c'est la vie. C'est la vie. Hey, Nathaniel, what's going on? No, that's all right, mate. I know it's that time of day in America. I'm mostly just testing a bunch of stuff, so I hope you have a good day, mate. Trying to get myself sorted so I can stay motivated to stream a bit more on YouTube. What was I doing? So we are going to faff about just for a couple of minutes and see if the tweet does get any traction. And in the meantime, of course, the chat changes have gone over to my Gmail and made it annoying. God damn it. I hate YouTube so much. I'm currently waiting for a new TV at home, which is exciting. I am, to the complete chagrin of everyone apparently on the r/home theater subreddit, have gotten a frame, Samsung The Frame TV, which is a completely underwhelming television experience, but as far as I can tell, a fantastic aesthetic addition to a small space. So a lot of people probably know I live in a unit, so we have a very small amount of space, and it might sound silly to people that actually have like square footage or square meters to work with. I think we're working with about 85 square meters in 2-bedroom, 2-bath. But just the act of having a television that you have to build an entire space around servicing that television, so like the lounge, the TV, the cabinet, all that sort of stuff, that takes up a lot of room, that takes up a lot of space. That's a lot of commitment of area to one specific type of activity. And we've got this sort of fantasy at the moment, which I say fantasy because we probably won't follow through with this completely, at least not for some time, and that is to put the frame TV on the wall and then rearrange the space to not actually make it look like a lounge room unless we want it to be a lounge room. And the main part of that is going to be to sort of completely disassociate the TV cabinet, TV stand. It's not really a stand because our TV already at the moment is attached to the wall. But we want to sort of move that from being the central parts of the living room. Maybe have two couches facing each other and the frame TV up behind one of the couches. Obviously, you can't watch the TV from that couch, but that's fine. Like when we have people over, we're generally not watching Netflix. We're doing something else, playing board games or card games or chatting, listening to music and stuff, and having space where you can have like 4 or 5 people sit comfortably inside is actually something that we don't currently have. We sort of need people to be sitting at the table and stuff. So yeah, I'm waiting for that, and it was meant to release on the 11th of April, and we are still waiting now in May, and I was hoping to have it delivered today, and we heard nothing, and I'm frustrated, but confident the TV will arrive soon. I'm hoping, very, very much hoping, in that it's probably not going to happen, but I'm hoping that it just shows up tomorrow, that they forgot to call us or don't call us and they just rock up with the TV tomorrow. That's fine, because I've been stalking the website. I bought it from a place called Video Pro, which is not one of our biggest stores in Australia, but they were selling the TV like $200 cheaper off rec retail as a pre-order for a new product compared to everywhere else. And okay, I'll take the discount. All right. And in exchange for that discount, I've had to wait an additional 3 weeks for the TV. So something that we're going to keep for 3-4 years. 3-4, fuck. That would be horrible, isn't it? Hopefully something we keep for 7, 8, 9 years. A couple of weeks to save sort of 10% on the TV price is certainly going to be worth it. Yeah. Anyway, so that's enough rambling. We probably should get to what we were looking at doing. That was all just a distraction while I was checking my personal email just to see if we got anything back. We didn't get anything back, so boo fucking who. I love how YouTube emails me, and I was about to make fun of it for doing this, but it emails you whenever you go live. I'm like, no shit, I'm live. But I suppose if someone were to get access to your account and go live, you'd get an email notification, and I guess that's a security feature, so I can't get too angry at that. All right, so hopefully we're sorted, and we have remembered some of the things that sort of stoked us into a unholy rage over the last week, and we will work with that and try and get a stream out by the end. I was hoping to stream a bit earlier, but I don't know, I knew when I started, when I decided today I was going to stream tonight, and stream to YouTube, not just Twitch, I knew what I should do is set a stream, what is it called? I should schedule the stream, and then I'll be sort of locked into, committed to doing it. And I didn't do that, so hey, that's what I get. I what's that word when you put something off? Procrastinated. I procrastinated on it to the point where I was almost about to just not stream and go to bed. And yeah, we ended up not doing that. So, hey Rex, what's going on? Nice. Happy first notification here on YouTube. I was about to start bragging about how much love I was getting over at Twitch this week. And how YouTube doesn't really deserve me at the moment, but hey, that's fine. That's fine. I was actually bitching mostly about the fact that YouTube doesn't let me modify chat to the level that Twitch does, and so I've struggled a lot to get chat to work the way I want it to work. Oh, holy shit! Okay. Sorry, I've got an extension, and I'm figuring out how it works. And I've just figured out how I can like click a chat to pop up on it. Anyway, that's fine. That's behind the scenes stuff. That's fine. So we're going to go over a few things today. And again, I'm just distracting myself because I don't know. I'm just distracting myself. Oh, shit. Restream from Twitch to YouTube is something I've considered. The downsides are that I would have to leave affiliate on Twitch, which means I'd no longer be monetized. To be clear, I don't care about the monetized part, but I do kind of care about some of the features that come with affiliate status. So for example, I keep putting off picking up my iPad and looking at trying to, actually put together some emotes. I'm not ready to pay for emotes, like to get an artist to commission them. But I kind of think that emotes are small, and I am not, it's not like I've never drawn anything. And, maybe I'd be able to throw something together, but I've just never gotten around to it. So I don't want to lose like the emote slots and stuff. And I think there's a few other things like I think I'd lose channel points. Yeah, so there's a few things that like every time I think, you know what, fuck it, leave affiliate, no longer need to do exclusivity, and I can restream and I can sort of try and capture both platforms. And I never quite get to it, but the other thing as well is when I'm on YouTube, I am a little bit more, well, a lot more directly political and opinionated on stuff that can be a bit divisive. I'm not entirely sure I want those two things to mix completely. Not that I am not open on Twitch about some of my attitudes towards, progressive and left ideas. But I don't necessarily want it to get to the point where that's alienating for people that don't share those ideas. Whereas on YouTube, good chance I'm going to alienate people that don't want to come to engage with things they disagree with. They just want to come and watch me roll for Yulan when she comes out. Or play Thick Thighs in Atelier Riser. It's complicated. I mean, the honest, at the end of the day, my biggest weakness, I guess, is that I don't put in the work between streams. I turn up, I stream, and then I don't do the connections. Like, I've got 0 connections. I sort of lost all my connections in YouTube because people stopped streaming themselves. Like, there are a few people that I used to collaborate with a little bit more and who are a bit more active, but they stopped streaming over the last couple of years. Or people that you just sort of lose connections with. You sort of find out that you're oil and water. And, find yourself without anyone to work with, which kind of sucks. And on Twitch, I'm too small to be relevant for collaborations and stuff, which, I don't know. Twitch used to be a lot different. What was it? Final Fantasy Remake came out in 2020, so it would have been about 2018. It seemed a lot easier to make friends with small streamers that were just starting. Yeah, now, I don't know, maybe I've gotten too old. And starting new streamers are broadly much younger. But like, I made friends with someone that was like, they're, I think 31 or 32, or were they 30 when we met? And so now they'd be 33, 34. I don't know. I've got a bad habit of always remembering people's age as the age I met them, not, recognizing the passage of time over the years. But yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. So I need to start. I need to do some stuff. And actually, obviously, you'd be aware that I have on Twitch occasionally tried to do just chatting segments and stuff, and I like the consistency. And often on Twitch, I just want to chillax and play games. But who knows? We'll see. Today, we're doing some fantastic Australian politics, I think, to start to warm up. It's something that this channel is very familiar with, or at least the content creators here that this channel is very familiar with. It's near and dear to my heart because it's not only cringy Christian content, but it's cringy Christian content from the same church that not the same church, but the same denomination, the same doctrine, the same theology that I used to go to. In fact, was it on this channel or was it on a different channel? Yeah, look, if I'm pretty sure that the chat here is a lot quicker. Like, I can see on my screen that the delay seems a lot less. So YouTube's doing some good stuff, but and I've just realized I don't think I've got chat on OBS. Okay, that's going to make it tough if I decide to edit this into something, because the chat won't pop up for people to see what I'm responding to. Anyway, fine, whatever. What was I saying? Yeah, so this is, yeah, what was it my channel or was it someone else's channel? I did way too much free work for other YouTube channels when I should have been trying to grow this channel at the start. I found in a box under someone's house like 8 months ago, something like that, a bunch of old CDs that included a bunch of my old hip-hop music. The Starting Soon for both my Twitch and YouTube, that's a backing track from when I used to do Christian hip-hop. And I found like our full EP that we had started recording, or at least 3/4 of an EP that we had started recording. And in that as well, I found from 2002. So I think it's, or was it 2004? I think it was 2004 election. I found a youth group not advertisement. It was like a video we recorded and shot. And we must have put it together on like an XP machine or something dodgy like that. Well, not dodgy. And part of it included talking to a chaplain for the high school I used to go to. You know what? No. Okay, let's watch it. Fuck it. I'm not sure if I did it on this channel or another channel. And if I haven't put it on this channel... man, that's funny. Where did I save it? Let's go to Explorer. Videos. Here we go. Actually, this is unrelated. This is just something random. But shut up. Yeah, that's probably A, loud in my ear, and B, not currently being picked up by my setup. So let me just add VLC quickly to the mix. So all the nostalgic stuff, like actual like photos and like, you know, video recordings of me and, you know, people I was friends with at the time. There's also like a crack for Blood Moon, like Morrowind Blood Moon and stuff, like just random files like that. And this is one that I think is really funny that I took the effort to copy this to a CD. Where are we? VLC. We'll put that to browser. I'm pretty sure, yeah, browser would be the correct input for that. And that was quite loud in my ear, so I'm probably going to want to turn it down at the source. Not that volume's super important in this. This is hilarious. Oh my god. I mean, it's probably only funny to me, but hey, funny to me is good enough for me. That's the button. Check it out. I saved this because I thought, you know what, I need to put this on a CD after I downloaded it. It's like some final in a Street Fighter 3 tournament. Fucking Makoto going off. Well, maybe it's not a final actually. Maybe it was just combo examples, and I was trying to figure out how to do combos in Street Fighter 3. Yeah, sorry, this is not a, yeah, this wasn't a final. It was just like ridiculous combos. And I'm pretty sure I downloaded this off Kazaa. And thank you for closing VLC and potentially showing my desktop. That's great. We'll learn from that. I used to love OG fighting games. I mean, I probably still technically do, but sadly, I was a king in a little pond, but I am a pauper in the ocean that is internet gameplay. I still occasionally will pick up a fighting game and try and play it. So I think the most recent one was Dragon Ball FighterZ. But yeah, I just get stomped in online play. It's not like the old days in Tekken Tag when people would get angry and stop fighting me, or playing Street Fighter 2 and where people would think it was cheating because I knew how to do the Hadouken and the Dragon Punch. Kind of bullshit, but hey. Oh no, Tekken 4, Jin Kazama, and knowing how to juggle with him. Oh god, it made people angry. And to be fair, Jin was a little bit broken at that point. Oh, here it is. Oh. Okay, it might get a copyright strike, so I'll mute it for a little while. All right. So I'm pretty sure it's 2004. I think we'll confirm the date when we start talking. So, all right, come on. Oh wait. This is not VLC. This is Media Player. You know what? Let's just open it in VLC. Since we... Shut up! Copyright? No, copyright. Right. Hopefully, I don't remember from memory 100%, but I don't think we had music playing the whole way through. Yeah, I never actively deleted any of mine, but going through the process of backing them up to CD and DVD every time I would, format my computer every sort of 6 to 12 months. And then I sort of got to the age when I moved to Brisbane and I would move a lot. And you just have to forget them once or pack them in a box and put them somewhere and then just not think about them and move and I don't know, like, honest to God, like, I didn't find these until a year ago, and the box was full of stuff that I would not have had anything to do with for at least 15 years. So I don't know how my friend, and to be fair, he's one of my closest, well, he is my closest friend. Like, we've known each other since grade 7. So what's that? Like, we graduated high school in 2001. So grade 7 would have been like 1996. Yeah, so we've known each other for almost 30 years at this point. And how he had a box full of my stuff, including my old Bibles, my photo DVDs, some Warhammer fantasy stuff. The fact that he managed to keep all of it, and he didn't realize, or like it didn't click for him to say, "Hey Sam, I've got all this stuff. Do you want it?" No idea how it happened, but eternally grateful that it happened. So anyway, there should be no sound now. Cool. So this is Harvey Bay. This is where I grew up. So this is north of Brisbane. Okay, hopefully the music stops.
And now we're at Urangan State.
Oh, there's still music. Urangan State High School.
People voting.
Okay, the music's fading. It's all good.
Who are we going to vote for?
You've got to vote for the Greens, alright?
This is from the Urangan State High Chapel people.
Yeah.
Urangan State High.
Don't even worry about anyone else, because the Greens, like, they got all this dodgy stuff, but it doesn't matter, right?
More than, I say more than likely, I'll be voting Greens first this election, because climate change, increasing pension and job seeker rates, looking at making housing more affordable for people, like all this really awesome stuff. But like at the time, this is what I was being taught. Like the dodgy Greens, they do all this dodgy stuff. He never goes into it, and I don't remember what the dodgy stuff was. But I remember at the time being fully on board with Family First, a Christian political party, and yeah, we'll
All the way, man, all the way. Anyway,
we'll see some more of that when we get to the YouTube videos I want to look at. So I just thought this was funny.
Family first.
Yeah, Family First.
No, do it. Don't even think about it.
Oh God.
Oh, welcome to Bringing It to Your Face. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We are bringing it to your face.
We spend the whole video pretending to beat this kid.
On election day 2004, and we're bringing it.
2004.
We're going to show you clips from what's been happening in youth. But first, we're going to take a walk through memory lane. Excellent. Now we're on our way to vote. But first, I'll take you through a few stuff that our youth has been doing. We had the car wash, which was on Saturday morning, which had a great... They were having fun rolling down the hills and getting stuck on the cliffs. We also...
Yeah, see, like we just intersperse. There's me.
A special feature of the very first edition of Bringing It to Your Face. Today, we've got something very special in store for you. We've got a
Man, look at that quality. Look at that flicker.
movie premiere.
Look at the scan line. Oh, you can't see the scan lines, but
A show called Ramo Gets Decked Repeatedly, Stunt Spectacular.
how did I not become a YouTube star in 2007, 2008 when YouTube came out?
Let's see our little hero.
Wait, is that going to be copyright? Is Eye of the Tiger copyright? Obviously, it's copyright. All right, let's see one stunt. No, mute. I kind of look like Penn. Yeah, healthy Christian masculinity. Oh wait, sorry. We almost missed the choke slam. We should see this choke slam at least. Where the hell was the boxing ring where we were? Oh, that wasn't really a choke slam. Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, so finding that, amazing. Amazing. There's like a bunch of photos and stuff, but they're more sort of, you know, interesting to, you know, us personally. Like I still like hang out with a lot of the people that or not a lot. I still hang out with people that I knew back then. The other guy that was on there, like his sister, I'm still friends with her. And one of her friends, I guess my friends at the time as well. But yeah, so funny. Because just to give context that what we're about to watch is the type of belief that I had in 2004, and we're looking at the 2022 election, and I'm going to look at what person I would be like if I was still part of that church. Which is kind of difficult to say, given that Martin Iles is a smug arsehole. But honestly, from the outside looking in, that's probably what people often appear like there. So. Let's have a look at their election strategy.
In relation to thinking, let's first get this straight. This is important. It's not the most important election ever. People always try and argue that. The campaign talking heads always say that. But I think certainly it's one of the most difficult elections ever, because there are fewer distinctives between the major parties than ever before. And the minor parties, to be honest, are a lottery. The thing about lotteries is they're not always lost, but they usually are. What are we going to do? If I could make one point this election, just one, it would be this. And I can't tell you how much this goes to the heart of the issue. This election, for you, must be about people, not about parties. The best thing that you can do is to forget about the parties for a second.
So that's really interesting to me. And we'll find out more about why he has that understanding of, you know, the ideal strategy to vote for the person, not the party. And the challenge I would have for that is that typically people will vote in line with the party that they're representing. So whether you're a Liberal, a National, a Labor, a Green, a, you know, United Australia, One Nation, whatever it is, like you join that party because there's a set of sort of political platforms that you find compelling and that you know, sort of want to style your political career about. So for me, it could be someone will say, there's a good example actually. There's a Liberal Party member called David Schwammer, and he is what I would uncharitably call a greenwasher, in that he will post on social media and he will make statements to the media and you know, give talks where he will be in favor of you know, taking positive steps when it comes to the environment and particularly climate change. However, every time he is on record to vote in the, you know, in his political career, he always votes against the things that he's claiming are his priorities personally. And that's because he's voting in line with his party, not in line with his presented politics. And I think that if you fundamentally don't agree with a party, then you really should completely remove anyone in that party from consideration when it comes to deciding who you're going to vote for. That can be difficult because I do agree that the distinction between parties is not as coherent as I'd like it to be, particularly when it comes to the two major parties. Now, a lot of countries are in that position where, you know, politics, whether it's as strictly bipartisan as somewhere like America, or if it's just very strong incumbents like it is in Australia and I think the UK as well, that what we really want to see is two options that provide different perspectives, whereas what we end up seeing is an extreme option and then a moderate option that can be argued to sort of pander to the extreme side in an attempt to sort of cut their grass and get some of their votes. And it's sort of the independents where you get a bit more leeway for voting for the person because they're not associated with a party, but often independents will align and work with the bigger parties, and you sort of get that anyway. But, you know, let's find out a bit
Lazy
more.
way to think to say I'm going to vote for a party. We need to stop that, and there's reasons which I'll explain. We need to start looking instead into the people on our ballot. Who are the names? Who are the individuals behind those names? Who is it that you can vote for or that you are voting for? The actual individuals, regardless of what colour they're wearing, regardless of what party they're a part of. And that requires a little bit more homework. It's a less lazy way to go. It's a more in-depth way to go, but it's crucially important. Because here's the thing. There are good people and there are bad people in all the parties. And that is actually the problem we face.
Can't argue with that.
Every party is tainted. There's some bad people and some good people. Well, most of them. I mean, look at the Greens. I'm not sure what to do about it.
Had to get the dig into the Greens. They're all got good people and bad people. Well, except for the Greens. They just want old people to have more money so that they can actually survive.
But I'm talking about Liberal, Labor, and the minors that we're thinking about in this election season.
Holy shit,
Take,
literally.
for example, the coalition.
I hate the
I
Greens
know
so
good
much.
people. I think people know there are good people in the coalition with proven track records and with proven pedigrees on all the important things. People of principle, people of values, people of faith. And yet this coalition government has had numerous substantiated sexual harassment claims against members at all levels. Like the characterization here of them being, fine, upstanding. Did he say godly? Whatever he said. I don't think you could characterize them as particularly nice people. And even outside of that, the fact that they outright just lie. Like, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, there was one of the coalition members, a guy called Josh Frydenberg, he was talking about taxes. It was like a Q&A, I think, for undecided voters to talk about the topics that might be important to them. And like he came up and he said that, under a Labor government, which is the opposing party, you're going to pay more in tax. You always pay more under Labor. And when the Labor member got to speak, and they were like, they had the numbers, and like, you have never paid more tax than you do now under every metrics available to us at the moment, whether it's median, GDP, like all this government currently has the highest tax rate ever. Like they lie, like they're not good people, but overseeing some really bad stuff. And that is the reality we have to confront. This coalition government has overseen the falling over of the long-promised religious discrimination bill. It was killed off at the 11th hour by...
Sorry, he said that the current government has overlooked some really bad stuff. I thought he was going to talk about the record-breakingly devastating bushfires, the huge flood that just was... The two huge floods, the coronavirus, No. It's the religious discrimination bill that was going to make it illegal to fire someone for being bigoted towards minorities on the basis of their religion. You still have religious freedom in Australia. Like you actually have a human right. Like there's a Human Rights Act that is in Australia that is enforced, where you cannot be discriminated against on the basis of your religion. Literally already exists. The act that he's referring to the bill he's referring to for religious discrimination is the protection against religious discrimination is to be protected against people saying you are a bigot for saying gay people are going to hell. That's what he's talking about as like this horrible thing that the current government has overseen.
Members of the coalition. Millions of dollars have also been tipped into school programs that teach gender bending, that teach queer sexuality, that teach explicit sexual concepts in primary schools and high schools, things like the Good Society. The Commonwealth government has funded that. A review into the affirmative treatment of children with gender dysphoria at hospital clinics across the country was quietly shelved.
Hey Spooky, how's it going?
Also, this government said that it was against mandates, which all right-thinking, freedom-minded, liberty-minded people...
We still haven't gotten to the bushfires, we still haven't gotten to the floods, and we still haven't gotten to the coronavirus as the challenges the current government has faced. Amazing.
...need to be against, but it acted very differently. It was silent on what the states did overall, generally speaking, explicitly actually endorsing the overall actions of WA and Victoria, the two worst examples. It applied mandates anyway to international travel, even though it said it was against them, and kicked Novak Djokovic out of the country, even though he was granted a valid medical exemption and came in good faith. And nobody knows that because they've got their media friends to sideline him to such a degree that the truth never came out about that. It was a completely political exercise to kick him out to make a statement about vaccination and mandates.
I love when the extreme right criticizes the pretty bad right for not being extreme enough, because it's just nice to see infighting on that side, like because sometimes you forget that it happens because they can be fairly united. But I love that he's complaining that while our federal government was lax when it came to coronavirus and was very permissive about states that were very quick to criticize other states about how strict they were on, the movement of people during the height of the virus and restrictions and stuff, like. From a center to left position, the federal government completely failed when it came to, providing a strong coordinated strategy for dealing with the coronavirus, and created a lot of confusion because they completely abdicated any responsibility, and they sort of said it's a states' right, a states' problem. Which we're Australia, we're not America. We don't give a shit about states' rights. We've got a federal government for a very specific reason. We've got state governments for very specific reasons. And, quarantine and biosecurity and stuff, pretty clearly federal level stuff for us. But, yeah, it's fantastic that, they're getting shredded from both sides. But,
For a government that says they didn't support mandates, come on. But when the politics says this is going to be popular, it's what you do, right? Also, mitochondrial donation laws, otherwise known as three-parent babies, championed and passed by this government, a process that involves the destruction of human embryos that is against every pro-life principle. Financially securing Australia's legacy media was another thing that this government did. They forced big tech, that is Facebook and Google, to pay the legacy media companies, News Corp and Fairfax and groups like this, for having social media pages or being on their social media platforms, which is bonkers. So the media company gets the privilege of being promoted through the social media platform, and now the social media platform has to pay them. Why? Well, it secured the...
I was wondering why he was angry about this, because these are the conservative outlets that promote the types of beliefs that generally Martin would be in favor of. But I guess what clicks is, hey, he's not a legacy media company, so maybe he's a bit salty that as a YouTuber he doesn't get to have a bite of that cherry, which is fair enough. And again, I agree. Like this, the strategy of forcing social media companies to pay to include in their search results like news articles and stuff, ridiculous. I'm sorry, newspapers. If you can't be profitable, die. We're done. We're done with you. Like. I've got no use for newspapers.
Financial future of struggling legacy media companies. That was this... Struggling. They're owned by fucking Rupert Murdoch and fucking, I forget the other guy's name, Nine. Like, almost every single media company in Australia is owned by a large corporation that is not struggling. That is hilarious. It's government. Also, the escalation of Australia's debt over the pandemic period has been among the greatest, if not quite possibly the greatest, in all the world.
You could have looked that stat up.
No fiscal restraint at all, which is what coalitions are meant to do. And there's been, I think we all know, a general void of conviction and leadership. It's been far more about chasing the polls, chasing the approval,
He's right.
running the focus groups, a huge lack of actual conviction leadership. But you say, well, aren't there good people in the coalition? I thought you just said that. Ah, yeah, but they're not in control.
Oh, so he doesn't like ScoMo.
In the present government. Take Labor, for example. In Labor's case, you say, well, are there good people in Labor? Well, yes, there are. Senator Kimberley Kitching was one. On social and moral issues, she was mostly solid. Not entirely, but mostly. She wasn't woke. She was great to work with. She was reasonable. There are others in Labor like her. Others who...
God, I wish he would actually give examples of like what she was reasonable about or what she was moral about. Like, I hate talking around it. I wish he was direct. Give me...
Who were a little more empowered actually after the 2019 election when Labor lost ground in in seats with significant faith communities on religious freedom grounds, and that actually changed their whole approach to the religious freedom issue, by the way, in the last few years. So it had an impact, and you can see how sometimes good people can be empowered by what happens in the electorate, which is where we come in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself, but you know, these good people are there, and you might look at me and think, really? Well, see, the thing is, they're not in control. They're not empowered in Labor. Also, the minor parties, the same principle holds. I get a lot of people saying, I'm never voting major again, I'm voting minor. Well, there's a problem with that. You've fallen into the trap I described, which is that you're focusing on the parties, not on the people. And here's the thing, in the minor parties, they have the potential to be every bit as bad as the majors because there are good candidates and there are bad candidates running in all of them. And we all love freedom, especially
This is
after
so
the last few
brain
years,
dead.
and I completely sympathise. But we don't love abortion, we don't love euthanasia, we don't love queer education, we don't love compromised Christian schools, we don't love the loss of religious freedom, and so on and so forth. And take it from me, there are candidates in some of these major minor parties who are bad on that stuff. They really are. Just as there are some who are good, but here's the point. It depends on the people, not on the candidates. It depends on the people, sorry, not on the parties. I'm fine with minor parties winning some seats. In fact, I'd quite like it if they had the balance of power in the Senate, just to gum things up a little bit and stop the government doing anything bad, especially if Labor's going to win. I want the right people from the minor parties to get in, so that the right people are in control of those minor parties. Otherwise, we just have a repeat of the majors where the wrong people are in control, and we run that risk, and it could actually happen. To use a biblical metaphor then, the problem we have in politics right now is that the wheat and the tares are growing up together in the parties. And it is for this reason that I just want to get some perspective for a second.
I love the wheat
Whichever of the
metaphors.
major parties wins, there will be a silver lining. Don't just focus on the next few weeks. Focus on the big picture and where politics is going here. If Labor win, you can expect faster social change, and that will be bad. But the silver lining is this: the coalition may reflect
God bless him for saying
that
it.
they simply can't take their base for granted. They can't treat them with indifference and expect to win elections. And that will empower, that in itself will empower the good people in the party to start conversation, to start reform, okay? And it will disempower the bad ones who have been ruling the roost, especially.
So remember that in his mind, the bad ones are the ones that are permissive of queer education, as he puts it. That are, you know, interested in health-based policy decisions when it comes to things like pandemics. Like, these are the things that he cited as concerns in the current government, and therefore the bad people, the people that have. I mean, like one of these points was like, there's a lot of spending going on in the current government, and normally coalition governments don't spend. Glad they did spend, but I think one thing that's key is that a lot of the spending was for people to get, I guess in America you'd call them stimulus checks, but in Australia there was a almost like a universal basic income for people that were affected by the pandemic in JobKeeper and increases to job seeker entitlements. And those, particularly the JobKeeper, where essentially businesses were given money to cover their staff wages for the period they were forced to shut down so that they wouldn't have to fire people. That was the Labor government, sorry, not government, that was the Labor Party, who are not in government, who forced that on the current government. And that's where the debt increased. So even when he's talking about, coalition aren't meant to increase debt, that was a Labor policy. So what he's against, even when he's sort of putting the blame on the coalition government, is the progressive option, or more progressive option, which, always has a bit of a, complicated to it. Silver linings refers to when there's something negative is going to happen. A silver lining is something that at least is some small positive you might get from it. So, what would be a good example of a silver lining? I was late to the train on the way home from the city, but at least the silver lining was I could stop at the coffee shop and get a coffee. Usually they're minor things that make a bad situation not feel as bad as it would otherwise. That's probably the best I can. Yeah, Yeah, I think that's right.
Of late. Now, if the coalition win, you may get a slowdown, not a stop, but a slowdown of social change, and that will be good. But the silver lining is that, that is the silver lining. The other side of it is, the bad side is that they may not
Take
actually
two,
get a
mate.
chance to stop and reflect. And they may carry on with business as usual. And here's the other perspective. Labor will win. If they don't win this election, they will win the next election. Or if something historically abnormal takes place, although it already would have, but if something historically abnormal takes place, it'll be the one after that. Here's the thing, see, the parties currently in the present state of politics, with the wheat and the tares everywhere, the parties don't hold the answers. The right people and the empowerment of the right people in those parties holds the answers. Now you say, well, how do we empower the right people in those parties? Well, we've got some ideas, fortunately. What we plan to do actually is, together as ACL, run the biggest information campaign that we have ever run. It's a campaign, importantly, that is targeted at the public. It is a campaign that is targeted to the public at large. It is not just to ourselves and our supporters. We're not just producing tables for our people. No, we're going out into the mainstream to campaign to change minds in the community. It is also focused on key seats, where the MPs or the candidates have a record on those issues that we really care about, like religious freedom, like Christian schools. It's based on where those MPs there's a story to be told about them, good or bad. It's important, it's focused on those important issues to people of faith or who are sympathetic to faith. You say, well, how do you do that highlighting in the community at large? Well, the effort's firstly going to be supported by a number of you who are watching this, our wonderful volunteers, 7,700 active volunteers. I like to call them activists for truth, but people don't like the activist word, but that's what you are, you're activated. 7,700 volunteers, which is a huge number by any stretch. It'll be supported by our pool of those people. It'll include multiple flyer drops in the key electorates that we are looking at.
They did flyer drops.
Australia Post and volunteers. It will include phone canvassing. It will include phone technologies like robocalls, ringless voicemails, billboards right across in a number of places, newspaper ads, maybe corflutes, other technologies and methods as well. We're going to do all that in the mainstream. You say, well, who are you going to be highlighting? I'm glad you asked. Firstly, some of the people, to hold them to account, who have been seizing control of the Liberal Party lately to pursue an anti-faith agenda, who are actually part of a bit of an ideological cancer in the party, and they're just doing what they want because they have confidence that there's going to be no consequences. Well, it's a new day. That's no longer the case. People like Bridget Archer in the electorate of Bass in Tasmania, Fiona Martin in the electorate of Reid in New South Wales, Trent Zimmerman in the electorate of North Sydney in New South Wales, Dave Sharma in Wentworth in New South Wales.
Dave Sharma. That's the fucking greenwashing son of a bitch that I mentioned earlier.
Bench, Rebecca Sharkey in Mayo in South Australia. Why? Well, in the case of Bridget Archer and Rebecca Sharkey, you have MPs who voted against protecting people of faith from discrimination.
Oh, these are people they're attacking, right?
And also voted in favour of repealing laws that allow Christian schools to employ, to teach, and to otherwise...
Okay, he's going to be against David Sharma because he pretends to be a greenie.
So the laws that allow Christian schools to be Christian, they voted to delete them from the legislation. That's why. Trent Zimmerman, very similar, except that he didn't actually vote against the religious discrimination bill. He didn't actually vote against protecting people of faith from discrimination. He walked out of the chamber and didn't vote at all, which was a strategic move, but we're calling him out on it. And in the case of Dave Sharma, he didn't do all of those things, but what he did do was he did vote to repeal a law from the legislation that allows Christian schools to teach and to operate in accordance with their faith. That is why we are going into those electorates. There is information to be spread about those issues that are important to the work we do, to the faith community, to social conservatives, but for the welfare of Australia at large, which need to be highlighted. These are issues that otherwise wouldn't be highlighted, apart from the fact that we're in this privileged position where we're about 2/3 of the way through building a serious campaign infrastructure. And for a change, it is coming from somewhere that is not on the far left of the political spectrum. You know, MPs live in fear of, and this disempowers good people and empowers bad people because they are living in fear of campaigns coming from groups like Climate 200, like Get Up, and these groups, they campaign
Get Up.
dirty, they campaign... campaign on issues with which we have very little common ground. Well, that's not what we're doing. This is an exciting time in Australian politics. This is the existence of a campaign force that has power to encourage good politicians to stand up for good issues, because they know there's people out there who will take the message to the public that these issues matter. And it also disempowers, because the mainstream media is not going to do that. They don't do that. You know, these other campaign juggernauts don't do that. And it disempowers those who would seek to do harm in relation to these issues. It calls them out. It exposes their record. And that's exactly what we see in what I've just described. The question now is, well, what can you do as part of it?
I don't care about what I can do. But yeah. That wasn't as interesting as I was hoping it was going to be, I'll be honest. But that's all right. We've got to keep an eye on these people, right? All right. Is there something? Freedom-friendly minor parties. Yeah, unfortunately, their content in the lead up to the election seems to have focused more on very specific election stuff, which isn't as interesting. It's like a Q&A, but it's half an hour. That's too long. Come on, guys. They stopped doing like their weekly show, The Truth of It. Like, I think what we just watched was the last episode they aired, which was 3 weeks ago. Normally they do it weekly, but I guess they got so much election stuff to do that they gave up on it. Oh, holy shit. Okay, this is old. This is old, but I want to say hilarious, but it is there's a sadness around it, but it is kind of hilarious when, you know, people on the right kind of fuck themselves. So let's have a look at what Martin Iles had to say about Dave Rubin having children with his partner, them being in a gay relationship. And I know that this was covered quite a lot already from the American point of view, because obviously there was a lot of pushback in conservative American circles who were calling out Dave Rubin, and there was sort of an attempt from Dave, I think, to control that story, to sort of paint it in a better light, to sort of point out that, you know, it's a stable, loving relationship and the kids are still going to be looked after. Maybe not having full eyes on the fact that, you know, this is something that is deeply offensive to, you know, a lot of people in the deep right conservative circles and stuff. But let's see what Martin's got to say. It's a short one, so.
I'm going to go into some controversial territory.
Heresy.
A short segment on Dave Rubin, the well-known conservative commentator, and the fact that he and his husband, he's gay, are expecting a couple of children. This is awful, talking about it in one sense.
Okay. I thought he was just saying this is awful. That was it, but no. Okay, it's awful talking about it. Okay, maybe he'll turn it around.
This is one thing that makes me really despair, and one thing I struggle not to get just a little bit angered by, and it is the intentional raising of a child in an unnatural family structure.
Holy
Depriving
shit!
the child of its mother, of its father, or both. There are support groups around the world for children who were adopted, or kids who were donor conceived, even in the best of families, who report lifelong pain and disturbance at their dislocated biological history, their lack of connection with their parents.
I grew up without any father. I've never met my father. I grew up only with a female parental figures, whether it was my mother or my grandmother. So,
and so forth. But you're not allowed to raise those very real emotional tolls, those very real troubles that young people face in relation to gay.
Not allowed to raise it, but here we go. He's going to raise it, despite the fact that he's going to prime this with the premise that he's not allowed to give the opinion he's about to give on a public platform. So bear that in mind, because the woke cancel mob has already trashed this video, so we're not watching it right now.
parenting or intentional single parenting because it's not politically correct and it's unkind. I'll tell you, it is unkind, but it's unkind. Those structures are unkind to the children. Criticising them, if it's unkind to the parents, it's nothing compared to the unkindness to the children inflicted by those structures. I'm not saying that I'm against adoption, just to be clear, because it is restorative, as far as possible, of circumstances that have been deprived of a child, okay? So that's actually a restoration effort. But I am against everything that deliberately channels in the opposite direction, the intentional depriving of a child of their mother or their father or both, or a mother-father household, which is not only biological, it's not only the natural course of things, but it is right. It is a definition given by the Creator himself.
So let's remember that for probably the majority of human history, that kids were not necessarily raised by a mother and a father, but they were raised by a community, by villages, by tribes, where it was a community effort, and that the challenges that we face often with households and child rearing is the fact that people have become less cohesive as communities. Like we've become more split apart and less connected to each other, and that while you might be able to look at single parent homes and the challenges that come with that, or people that might have it, lack something or feel they lack something because they don't have one parent or the other. But a lot of that is indicative of other things, other pressures. Single parents having to work so much to be able to sustain, a livable wage, for example, is probably far more damaging on the child than just having one of two parents or one of many parents. But that's not his concern. His concern is not the welfare of the child when it comes to having the basic needs of, food, shelter, and clothing and education. None of that is the issue here. The issue is just that, hey, that kid's got two dads, and I think that's wrong. But to my understanding, there's nothing that actually supports that there's any inherent negative from having non-traditional family structures. And that any perceived negatives that have been brought up can be reasonably debunked as it being social pressures from these types of people who actually inflict that damage on those people by making them feel like that they don't actually have a functioning family, and to restore to that child, to do the restorative thing that he talks about with adoption, actually accepting those types of family arrangements and being for social programs and social structures and communities that are able to foster those types of interpersonal relationships more effectively would go a long way, as well as improving things like work conditions, particularly for parents, and work flexibility, and taking away some of this sort of garbage that comes with expectations around work becoming something that's more important in your life than anything else, and you've got to sort of structure your childcare and stuff around that. But Naruto. Naruto is raised by a village. Look, how often do you see in like popular culture or media or movies and stuff, like the idealized versions we have of things like, whether it's like villages in like fantasy or anime and stuff, or even modern day settings where neighborhoods, like, characters will know everyone around them. Like, you see Spider-Man, Miles Morales, he'll know people around his neighborhoods and stuff. People will wave to him. Like, it's sort of feels like it's natural for us to want that type of community. Like, we're social animals. And yet, part of this desire to inflict the traditional family values is part of what compartmentalizes us into these smaller groups. And, I feel it. I live in a unit complex of hundreds of people, and I've got no connection with neighbors at all because our society doesn't have that type of space. The one exception to that was the first New Year's I had in my house when we went upstairs, and people went upstairs as well because we've got it's called a sky lounge. It's not really that fancy, but it's sort of open air, and we went up there to count down the new year and have a few drinks, and people came up and bought a Bluetooth speaker and they let us connect to it, and we talked to them, and we we socialized with each other, even though none of us really knew each other before that night. And one of my friends became very distressed when one of them was like, oh, "You're old enough to be my mum," and it was hilarious. And I laughed with great gusto, despite the fact that I'm even older than her. But like those types of interactions are what help develop, strong bonds that go beyond the familial bonds. The excuse me. Sort of part of the irony is that, like I said, I didn't necessarily grow up. Well, I didn't grow up at all with any father figure beyond that which I would sort of project onto the men around me. And I think it was the social surrounding that I had from the church that sort of helped sort of make sure that that wasn't an issue, and it doesn't have to be an issue. And there are other ways to construct our lives to sort of fill those gaps. But hey. Hey, Linda. Yeah, we're sort of going back to the deep well of the Australian Christian lobby since we're halfway through our election season. I was curious what they've been talking about, and it turns out their political stuff has been very dry and boring. So we went back to 1 month ago when they decided to talk about Dave Rubin having children with his husband, which has been atrocious, as you have probably concluded.
Who made that environment for children. And Dave Rubin, a very popular so-called conservative
so-called
who also happens to be married to a man, has announced that they are expecting 2 children. What this means, of course...
Oh, he's angry. He's angry. He can barely get the words out.
They have looked at a gallery of women, and he describes the process. They've chosen the one that they like the look of. They've sent donor sperm, and she is carrying a baby for them, ×2. So... this is eugenics. This is soft.
What? Okay, how did we get to eugenics? What? How did we get to eugenics? Please justify eugenics. Or give me what you think is a justification for you. How is having a child with a mother eugenics? Is it because they picked the mother? Because most of us pick our sexual partners if we have children in the... shall we say, old-fashioned way. And even when it's a straight couple that are going in for surrogacy as an option because of their circumstances, they still pick from a book, from what I can tell.
Eugenics. So it's using women for exploitative purposes. They must give up the child that they carried. And it's pretending that these babies have 2 dads.
Way to take away the agency of the women who provide the gift of a child to other people because they are engaging in a selfless act of providing surrogacy. Like, holy shit. Amazing.
Which they do not. Any more that Leah Thomas was a woman, these babies do not have 2 dads. These are not statements of fact. They are impossible by virtue of the simple truth and science of the situation.
Does he think a child whose mother remarries and they get what they might call a stepdad, is that a fatherless child then? Because his argument here seems to be because it's not a biological father. Like, one can't be a biological father. Only one can biologically be the father because of the, only one sperm wins the race, right? Therefore, the other one can't be a father. Like, that's... I can't believe it. I've made an effort tonight to not look at stuff that would touch on gender issues because they are so fixated on gender issues that it's hard, and it's not something that I want to focus on because I want that space to be taken up by people that it directly affects more often than not. But it is so fucking impossible. Like, we're talking about 2 men having a family together, and we still get to gender critical issues. Oh my God. Father is not a biological thing. A father is a social relationship between a child and a masculine role model. Eugenics, yes, is about creating a better gene pool through removing genetic defects. And picking someone out of a book is not that. if we were to go with his justification that it's eugenics because they picked a woman they like the look of, Tinder is eugenics, eHarmony is eugenics. I was about to say Grindr is eugenics, but that's probably less likely to be something that results in conception, shall we say. Basically, any dating app is eugenics. You know, sliding into people's DMs on Twitter is eugenics. Like, hey, wait, yeah, so Jesus didn't have a father because there was no biological material from God. Amazing.
But apparently it's exciting, it's joyful.
I saw that
it's
before
amazing,
that message was removed.
And it is worth celebrating. Well, you'll excuse me if I don't. It got me wondering.
To be fair, they didn't ask him to celebrate.
If I watch this and think to myself, this is horrendous. This is dreadful. I mean, I'm not married. It doesn't matter how much I want children. I will never have...
Virgin. You're a virgin. That means he's a virgin. He's a virgin. I shouldn't make fun of that. I'm sorry.
A child because
I realized what I was doing after I did it. And it's, you know, not everyone's into sex, but anyway.
It would be wrong unless there was some very, very, very unusual circumstance at play. Well, this is wrong because those children do not have two dads. And I think, why do I have that reaction?
Because you're a bigot.
Why is it that when I look at these guys announcing what's going on, that they are so completely and profoundly blind to the wrongness of what they're doing? I think there can only be one answer. I think it must be self-righteousness. Explain. Reuben is convinced that this is his identity and that it defines him and that it must define his world in order for him to be fulfilled. But he is not convinced that what comes out of his heart, those things which are attached to what we now call in the modern age our identity, our inner person, could at all be wrong, sinful, or evil. Or that if we were to pursue and to follow what comes from the inner person, that could be the cause of us inflicting wrong, inflicting evil on other people. He doesn't believe that, although he believes in his identity. But hear the words of Jesus when he talks about that which we might pursue, which comes out of our identity and ourself. He says this, that which comes out of the person, this is in Mark's Gospel chapter 8, I think, that which comes out of the person is that which defiles the person. For it is from within, out of the hearts of people, come the evil thoughts, acts of sexual immorality, thefts, murders, acts of adultery, deeds of greed, wickedness, deceit, indecent behaviour, envy, slander, pride and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the person. Boy, that's a countercultural statement. What's the source of sin? It's not all the stuff out there in the society and the culture and the politics. Oh, no, it's this. And this is where the Christian ought to be. Indeed, every true Christian should be and is so different. The Christian is the person who has realized that he is worse than he will ever truly know.
That is the worst trait of Christian belief, is the necessity of self-hatred to be righteous, to essentially boil down your own ego, your own pride, your own ability to exist without having to consider yourself to be broken, sinful, and abhorrent, evil, and atrocious. It's one of those feedback loops that generates, I think, the shame that helps prevent people from getting out of these types of Christian. I want to be specific to these particular Christian denominations that engage in this to the greater degree, because to be very clear, there are Christian denominations in Australia that are supportive of the queer experience, and like they accept people that undergo gender affirming treatment, that have non-traditional family structures or attractions. They do exist. Like there are Christian sects that are based on specifically the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and they focus on Jesus loved people. Not to say I necessarily think that it's got a higher level of truth, but I at least can recognize that the level of harm is probably down to the point where it's, pretty equal with the base level human experience, where we all sort of carry various different biases and, problematic behavior to one degree or another, depending on what the specific topic is. This, however, is sort of the explicit self-loathing that kind of really frustrates me. And here, his entire point is he fundamentally doesn't believe that the identity of someone who is gay is relevant to their personhood. It is an expression of evil that comes out of them that needs to be dealt with. And I find it very difficult to imagine how that would feel to have that type of have that expressed to you and have to deal with how you either internalize it or protect yourself from it when it is a constant, unending cry from the far right conservative Christian bases that, especially Dave Rubin, on a very surface level, it's easy to think, ha ha ha, it's really funny that he's getting what he deserves because he constantly, flirted with the right when he sort of started his career in, YouTube and being a personality as sort of a centrist. I listen to all ideas, but very clearly he currently has existed now for a long time as a conservative and sort of shares those conservative ideas. And I think for Dave Rubin in particular, he's sort of found himself drawn to the idea of, the proud Western tenets of freedom and patriotism and truth and all the sort of apparel that goes with conservatism. And now he's finding out that that comes with all the bigotry against his direct identity as well. And it's tempting to find that funny because he's inflicted it on himself, but there's a hard line to find when it comes to people that are victims versus the victimizers. And generally people that promote and, the talking heads, the pundits that are drawing people to that side are, readily identified as victimizers. But I guess that's not always the case, and it's still contextual on, depending what you're talking about. And in this case, I got to assume that Dave has lost friendships over this. The irony is that he's been open and out about his partner, so it's not like people haven't known that he's gay, and he's still got a certain level of acceptance on the right. Definitely the having kids part has sort of demonstrated a lot more clearly, I think, to everyone that you're still a deviant to them, and you put one foot out further than what they can sort of look past, and that's pretty much it, I guess.
That his sin runs deeper and controls him more profoundly than he can ever possibly imagine. And he needs not to live by his identity, but to live by the light and the holiness of Christ, which comes from outside of himself, and who alone liberates him from his identity and the evil that lurks within himself, and saves him not only from the burden of that on his own life, but of the burden that can be inflicted on the lives of others. Hence the two pillars of Christian conversion. Repentance toward God, that is the conviction of our sin, which is an act of God in today's world. Nobody believes they're a sinner or they're
Please let the other one at least be the love of God. Please let the other one be the love of God.
Wrong. Self-righteousness reigns supreme. Oh no, but God can convict of sin, and he can cause a person to turn from it and renounce it. And then, of course, the second, faith. Turning away from sin, turning to Christ.
So his tenet of salvation doesn't even include the love of God. That's really shitty, low-tier
so
Christian
important.
doctrine.
And the moral of the story is this. Mr. Rubin and his husband, and I wish them no harm, But my goodness, this challenges me.
I wish them no harm, but I just spent 8 minutes telling you why what you're doing is evil and how you're harming your children and how your family is built broken. But no harm. I don't wish you any harm. Fuck off.
But the moral of the story is that, yeah, he may have said that he converted to conservatism some years ago. But getting people on the right political side in the right political trench will not save the world. Oh, no. Only God does that, who changes the heart in Jesus Christ. And self-righteousness will prevent us from ever embracing that, because Christ comes and does away with our self-righteousness.
I don't need your preaching anymore, buddy. Shut up. All right, so the ACL have been pretty quiet. I say quiet, I mean boring. I mean, like, not interesting at all. Happy days. Happy fucking days. Yeah, look, the whole true Christian thing, I find it ironic. Like, I'm fairly removed from my days of faith, and I still find myself thinking that the fundamental, like the more fundamental and the more extreme versions of Christianity that we see, I feel like that they are still the more authentic versions of the religion when it comes to actually practicing, the tenets of the faith. Like, to be fair, like I studied at Bible college, and I didn't study specifically the doctrine related to the evangelical Pentecostal faith. I studied Protestant, broadly Protestant, which is basically everyone except for the Catholics and the Greek Orthodox. So it sort of captures the core Christian doctrine that, your Baptists, your Methodists, your Pentecostals, your Anglicans, like it sort of broadly covers all of their doctrine. And like, I do think that, the Bible is, clear about things like people are born sinners. And so that doctrine, I think, is accurate to the text. And I think that people are morphing Christianity into something that is more palatable to modern considerations of, being nice to other people and realize, like, the Bible was written in a time when specifically people were very easy to categorize as in-group, my tribe, our group, everyone else, enemies, not human. I don't have any particular feelings if any harm comes to you because I'm very focused on the survival of my in-group. And over time, you sort of see that as we progress more and more. We talked about in the 90s that we're becoming a global village because things like the internet were coming and connecting people closer than ever before. And it's become harder and harder to define people as in-groups and out-groups. We see large stretches over the last 100 years where, I'm not saying any of these things are solved, but we see where we work more towards including people into the in-group and having fewer and fewer groups that are excluded in the out-group, where, you see things like women's suffrage, you see things like emancipation of slaves in America. We see, in Australia, where we started to look at recognizing more the Indigenous people of Australia and the people that have been displaced by the invasion of Australian from European countries. Looking at queer communities and, like, instead of them having to hide, they're being welcomed in, more integrated into, in groups that are broadly accepted. Nothing's more sort of open to queerness than Generation Zoomers. But that's becoming a problem for Christianity, and they either need to evolve with that or they need to kick and scream against it. And we're starting to see them kick and scream against it far more effectively than they have for the last 10 years. And that's something with Roe versus Wade as well in America, where, Yeah, Linda, I haven't streamed for a long while. I've sort of been struggling with trying to get YouTube in a position where I'm satisfied with the live stream setup, specifically with chat. And also finding a way to get some discipline in being consistent. Why did I look at my YouTube channel? I think I was threatening to quit Twitch over something. And one of my Twitch viewers was like, "Oh, what's your YouTube channel?" And they subscribed. They were in the chat earlier, Rex. And YouTube is also making some announcements with making their live streaming better. Like at the moment, YouTube is working very hard to become a complete competitor to Twitch in terms of all the features and stuff. And one of the features is that when you are live streaming, when you finish live streaming, you can then go, okay, everyone, let's go over to Navadia's live stream. She's about to stream, or she's streaming at the moment. Let's all go and raid Navadia's chat and say hi. They're adding that to YouTube, and that's something that's a bit of a culture thing on Twitch that helps, I guess, develop communities and stuff. But when I saw they were bringing that to YouTube, I'm like, oh, sweet, it's on YouTube. I'm going to go back to YouTube, and it sort of reminded me that I had a channel here. Although that feature is only available if you have 1,000 subscribers. And I was looking at my analytics today, and there's some videos that have got some views and stuff, and maybe I just need to look at what videos have got views and focus on that stuff. Less this Martin Isles piece of crap. So speaking of views. More modern day debate. What's everyone's thoughts on modern day debate? I think they're pretty dumb. I've got issues with modern day debate. I don't mean personally. I don't know them. I've never interacted with the guy that runs it. I'm aware that there are, I know people sort of tacitly that have been on it. There are some streamers that I broadly like as streamers. I know they appear on Modern Day Debate. I typically watch some of those debates on, I don't watch through the Modern Day Debate channel itself. So, broadly speaking, so when I came into YouTube, sort of the skeptic community, it was through, what do you call it? It was through like Flat Earth compilations, which led to like debates between flat earthers. It was actually through the Non Sequitur show, I think, because I saw their Flat Earth, I think Saturday, whatever day they did the Flat Earth debates and stuff. And that's sort of what led me to seeing Shannon Q, Aaron Ra, and I think that it was a sort of a dual prong because I was also watching Jacqueline Glenn content at the time. And that's sort of what opened me up to all the other sort of atheist YouTube stuff, like Paula Gia, Vice Rhino. I can't name everyone, but you know what I mean. Flat Earth Friday, yeah, that was probably it. So as part of that, Modern Day Debates does seem to be a fairly ubiquitous and a reasonably popular platform. It seems to always be the place that gets recommended for neutral debates. And like I say, I sort of, I know people... I have people in my Twitter list that have been on Modern Day Debate that will go on there to talk about one thing or the other. So Modern Day Debates, they will platform pretty much any religious, political, social topic. They style themselves as a neutral platform, so they themselves don't present a bias. Well, I shouldn't say that. They present themselves as having no bias, which I think is already a red flag. And they present themselves as being somewhere where they will try and treat both interlocutors as evenly as possible. Now, as Spooky has pointed out, they are not shy of controversial topics. And I think there's a lot of stuff they do that they do explicitly for views, for entertainment purposes, which it's not wrong to do something for fun, right? I'm not criticizing fun, But when we're talking about topics that can be fairly polarizing, but also socially important, I think treating them with a level of respect to ensure that discussions that occur around these topics, particularly topics that can generate bias or harm towards particular groups, I think that there's a responsibility that goes with that. So, for example, it's pretty clear that, we would consider that talking about flat Earth theories and saying, hey, the Earth is flat, the government's lying to you, that is not something that is has no consequences. Like that's something that leads to conspiracism. Flat Earth at one point at least was a doorway into deeper conspiracies, and I've seen lots of fairly compelling speculation that people would enter to conspiracies through flat Earth because it's fairly innocuous, and that would get drawn into things like QAnon, which is like an umbrella conspiracy that sits over many other conspiracies to sort of draw them into this sort of centralized pipeline, which becomes more damaging because it becomes more about the government can't be trusted and anything the government tells you is a form of control, and then suddenly you're not following health advice, mandates, vaccinations, Pizzagate stuff. Like, there are things that I think are dangerous, and not that they should be censored in the specific term of censorship where it actually becomes criminal or illegal to say some things, but it shouldn't be platformed, which I think is a positive engagement. Like, it is not censorship to not positively engage with ideas. It is just not platforming ideas. There's two different things, and I think in the efforts to be against censorship, a lot of people actually engage in positive platforming and then claim when that positive platforming ceases that they have been censored, and I sort of got an issue with that. Yeah, Q is crazy. For a minute, I was like, are you talking about Shannon Q? Because I mentioned Shannon Q. She's not crazy, right? But yeah, anyway, that's fine. So, this is the Modern Day Debate page, their YouTube channel. So to get an idea of some of the stuff that they've talked about, and I'm not saying everything they do is bad, right? That's certainly not the case. Why can't I read these titles? Why aren't these titles? Is systematic racism real? Debate. Full woke? Debate. Was Russia provoked? Debate. Muslim versus ex-Muslim. Atheist versus Christian. Sharia law? Debate. Muslim versus atheist debate. What are these topics? What are these topics? These are not topics. Young Earth? Debate. The Great Gravity Hoax. Flat Earth return? Debate. Let's, out of curiosity, what should we click on? Is systematic racism real? Right? We're not going to watch the debate. Don't worry. I know it's 2 hours. But I just I want to see how they frame the debate, because my contention is that modern day debates are not debates. They are arguments. And the reason they're arguments and not debates is because they do not have clearly defined statements that are held to the affirmative or positive that can be actually debated in any meaningful way, because quite often in the ones I have seen, you actually end up having a argument because the two parties don't actually fundamentally agree on how they define the topic. If you don't define a topic and agree on the topic of a debate, you can't have a debate. It's like you can't play soccer without a fucking soccer ball if you don't have a topic sentence to debate that you both understand in the same way. So, is systematic racism real? Let's have a listen.
People of the internet, welcome to Modern Day Debate. Tonight, we are debating, does systematic racism exist? We have James Hake of the Hake Report crossing swords with Hunter Avalone. And going first tonight is Hunter Avalone, so I will turn it over to Hunter for his 10-minute opening statement. Hunter, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Of course, I'm...
So, okay, Spooky, if you had been a mod at some point, do you happen to know whether or not in the organization of the debates, if there is a clear definition of the debate provided to both interlocutors. My understanding is that's not something that always happens or even commonly happens. And I've just realized that he's got a 10-minute opening statement. I thought he'd have like a 2-minute opening statement. I don't really want to listen to 20 minutes of opening statements to figure it out.
Taking the position that systemic racism is absolutely real and it's an almost undeniable fact, I would say. So I wrote something out. I will read it as quickly as I can. Part of the reason systemic racism is so hard to understand.
What's going on with my speed?
Is because it's multifaceted with downstream results from several historical policies. Excuse me, some policies had the intention to screw over Black people, while others are simply a result of an already broken system.
Okay, let's go to the next guy and see what his opening sentence is. Because like I said, this isn't the point of what I want to look at here. I just want to sort of see how we go. 10 minutes, come on, 2 minutes. Keep it snappy. Give me 10 minutes for the
Hunter Avalon, it's nice to
responses.
meet you on stream, man. Shout out to the chat.
Get to your point.
It is a phony and contrived artificial illusion of an idea, and it's regardless of results or intent, it's a foolish thing to be caught up in, and it only hurts Blacks who get caught up in this fake idea. I'm glad that it's two white guys debating it, because we don't have the years of brainwashing from childhood, generations upon generations, forcing this on us.
So they're not even talking about the same thing. Hunter Avalon opened with, hey, 420 Atheist, how's it going? So Hunter Avalon opened with, there are policies that either through intent or through being broken interfere with the ability of people to, interfere with, create racism through outcomes. And his interlocutor is like, no, doesn't exist. It's brainwashing, and it brainwashes the people that it affects. So yeah, clearly that's not actually going to be a debate, because they don't actually have the same point of reference. This is why I dislike modern day debates. Now, dislike was such a strong word, but I do mean it. I do actually mean it. And I think what's put me over the edge with this, because like I said, I watch through proxy some debates when there are people that I watch anyway get involved. And to be clear, I think you can strategically engage in places that are not good platforms. I think the answer is not to withdraw from them in entirety. So like, you don't necessarily want the good people to not be represented in these spaces, because there are definitely people that are undecided there. So this isn't a modern day debates is bad, so take them off your subscribe list or never watch them or anything like that. That's not the intent. The discussion here is they should be told very clearly when they're doing stupid shit. And is there anything stupider than this? Roe versus Wade on trial. Richard Spencer is one of the people participating in this. Now, I don't know the other person. I don't know K Fellows. So no judgment on K Fellows. Extra delight. I mean, fuck. What are you doing? Like, why can you not wait to listen to Richard Spencer talk about the Roe versus Wade trial and the impacts that it has on people? Like, Richard Spencer is currently irrelevant and should remain irrelevant and should not be positively platformed for any reason, because he is actually a Nazi. He's literally a Nazi. He literally worked towards the goal of setting up a white ethno-state. So why is he here talking about Roe versus Wade on trial? Like, what fucking went through whoever's responsible's mind to think, you know what? Richard Spencer, let's reach out. Or if not them reaching out, when he reached out to them and they looked at it and go, that's going to get some clicks. And it will. It'll get Fucking clicks. There's no comments yet? Dislike. I don't care. That's an informed dislike. I know the video's not out, but it's an informed dislike because there's nothing that can happen in this debate. Like, I literally don't care if Richard Spencer gets completely owned and looks like an idiot, because that still has no value, because looking like an idiot is still better publicity than being irrelevant. Ironically enough, like, I actually tweeted this, and I didn't tag Modern Day Debates. I don't actually follow them and stuff. Maybe I should have tagged them. I'm a big believer in that. If you want to call people out, you need to actually call people out. Like, this soft shit of like, you know what, I'm really sick of the atheist community being XYZ or not being critical thinkers, without actually saying like what you think isn't critical thinking, because quite often it's people that just hide behind this vague grandstanding of like, I think, you know, this is an important aspect of, you know, community, but they never call it out, because if they called it out, they'd actually find that they're probably on shaky ground when it comes to being consistent on whatever point they're criticizing other people for. I need to settle down because that's some unrelated anger coming out there. Yeah, so like, I always find it really weird. Like when I tweet something like this, yeah, trading clout, blah blah blah. The like to retweet ratio, like this is not being ratioed, to be fair. These are all people retweeting in support, and it's, you know, shit level of engagement. It's just my Twitter account. But yeah, see, people feel strongly about this, but not lots of people feel strongly about this. It's really fucking weird. I think people just like fun, I guess. Maybe I take this whole thing too seriously, or maybe some people don't take it seriously enough. Yeah, I can get that extension, but the extension only shows the number of people that thumbs it down that also have the extension, doesn't it? Like that extension links into other people with the extension and like collates it. Because as far as I can tell, or from what I heard, there was an extension that would show everyone's thumbs down, but that expired. Like YouTube actually expired that part of the API, so now you actually don't get any of them, which kind of sucks. But yeah, I don't know if I've got anything else to say about that, but I hate so much like trivial platforming of people. And look, actually, I do have something else to say about that. My contention is that a neutral platform is a lie. It's not an intentional lie. I think that the people involved do honestly believe that they're a neutral platform. And my position when it comes to bias is not that we should strive to being neutral, because we actually, I don't think there's anyone that I would be able to sit down and talk with who I would be able to get to the point where they would say, yes, if I try really hard, I don't have any bias. Like, I don't think anyone has that sort of level of self-delusion that they can exist or, you know, consider any particular proposition without having any bias. I will sit here and happily say that anything you ask me to consider, I will have biases there. Part of those biases I can identify. Some of those biases I will not identify. And therefore, I can never truly be neutral about any particular topic. You know, you ask me about a particular country, and I'm going to have a bias about it. I'm going to have a bias about its people. I might try and address those biases through being proactive and engaging with, you know, education about those things. But, you know, there's the known knowns, the unknown knowns, and the unknown unknowns. It's a whole thing. So we can never be confident about bias. And so this is what I learned when I was in university. So part of my degree, I studied communications, and part of that was journalism. And one of the key factors that we learnt in university for that, and something that is woefully missing from any journalistic endeavors I see from mainstream media, is that what we do when we want to seek truth is we declare our biases. It's the same way when you're doing a study or you do any sort of academic writing, is that you will declare what your assumptions are, so that any biases in those assumptions can actually be identified by other people and that they can take that into account. So I sit here and I tell you that I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any type of theistic being. I can tell you that I'm pro very socialist policies when it comes to the intervention of government and the people. I think that workers should have greater capacity to influence their workplaces. I think that education should be free based on the fact that higher educated populations tend to earn more, having higher GDP and create more wealth overall for the country, and so it's a net positive. I think healthcare should be free because I think that a healthier population, again, earns more money, greater GDP, more stability for people. I also think that a universal basic income would be a net positive as well, because people can then afford to take more risks when it comes to innovation, creating businesses, creating their own preferred way to live and their own preferred way to experience the world around them, because they've got the safety that comes from things like a universal basic income. These are my biases. So when you start to talk to me about things like Starbucks in America, they are looking at providing pay rises in stores that have no union or are not talking about unionizing. When I'm talking about that particular news story, for example, you might understand where my biases are. When we're looking at the Australian Christian lobby, like we were earlier tonight, knowing that I'm an atheist, you understand that I have a bias where I don't believe the things that the ACL believe, and therefore I might be, a little bit more harsh on their views around certain things. That's not to say that I'm wrong, but it's to say that you can understand contextually what my bias is. Modern day debate claim to be neutral. I think if you start to look at what their subjects are and how they approach it, that they're not actually neutral. I'm fairly confident that the fact that they platform so many toxic people, that they have a bias in a direction that I politically wouldn't particularly agree with. I sort of think that they're probably closer to being libertarians, or what I would derisively call as well enlightened centrists. So I think that that's a bias that they see as neutrality, but I see as actually still a bias in a direction. It's very easy to get caught up in the left-right political compass meme, but it's three-dimensional at the very least when it comes to political compasses. And I hate that it's seen as a neutral platform by so many people. Hey, wait! Are they trying to justify themselves?
The other...
What is this? This doesn't look like their format. Is this just a video they've linked from another channel? No, they've uploaded this. Okay, so it's from Learn Liberty. What's Learn Liberty? Students for Liberty. Okay, whatever.
The other way in which I do agree with my fellow panelists that political correctness has done an enormous amount of harm in the sliver.
There is the bias
of the population that might be, wouldn't want to say persuadable, but certainly whose affiliation might be up for grabs, comes from the often highly literate, highly intelligent people who gravitate to the alt-right, internet savvy, media savvy, who often are radicalized in that way, who swallow the red pill, as the saying goes, the illusion from the Matrix, when they are exposed to the first time to true statements that have never been voiced in college campuses or in the New York Times or in respectable media, that are almost like a bacillus to which they have no immunity, and they are immediately infected with both a feeling of outrage that these truths are unsayable, and no defense against taking them to what we might consider to be rather repellent conclusions. Let me give you some examples. So here is a fact that's going to sound ragingly controversial, but is not, and that is that capitalist societies are better than communist ones. Okay? So if you doubt it, then just ask yourself the question, would I rather live in South Korea or North Korea? Would I rather live in West Germany in the 1970s or East Germany or in the 1960s? So this is not, I submit that this is actually not a controversial statement, but in university campus.
I'd submit that it's a controversial statement because he is talking about economic systems, and then he's given examples of government systems of authoritarianism versus democracy, not communism versus capitalism.
Campuses, it is would be considered flamingly radical. Number two, here's another one. Men and women are not identical in their life priorities, in their sexuality, in their tastes and interests. Again, this is not controversial to anyone who is even glanced at the data. The kind of vocational interest tests of the kind that your high school guidance counselor gave you have been given to millions of people. And men and women give different answers as to what they want to do for a living and how much time they want to allocate to family versus career and so on. But you can't say it. I mean, a very famous person on this campus did say it, and we all know what happened to him. And he's no longer, well, he is on this campus, but no longer in the same office. Here's a third fact that is just not controversial, although it sounds controversial, and that is that different ethnic groups commit violent crimes at different rates. You can go to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, look it up on their website. The homicide rate among African Americans.
Steven Pinker is a name that sounds familiar, and I don't know if it sounds familiar for a good reason or a bad reason, but I'm not getting good vibes at the moment. So the issue at the moment is not whether things are true or wrong. The issue with the statements he's making is the conditions in which they are employed and how they are used. The first one was fair. What was the first one again? Yeah, the first one was communism versus socialism, and then contrasting that with authoritarian versus democratic regimes. You can't compare economic systems by comparing governments under which those economic systems were said to have been enacted, because the conditions change completely depending on the government that's in enacting those systems. Whatever. The second one, when he talks about men and women don't have identical preferences, well, the issue is we don't actually necessarily have a strong level of confidence that those preferences are based on socialization versus biology. And then on top of that, we don't actually fully understand how that biology is impacted by people when they, are trans as well. So to just say that men and women do have preferences then becomes something that's very easily weaponized into, well, women are actually nurturers. They're actually biologically wired to, raise the children, while the men, we're hunters. We're the ones that go out. We're to go out and we're to earn. And then you get these circumstances where men have lower levels of access to parental leave and parental support when they have kids, that they become alienated from the family developing in those early years, and it becomes harder for men to make those decisions, particularly if a relationship doesn't go well. Then they experience a bias in the courts when it comes to determining the custody situation for children, because there's a bias towards people thinking, well, women have a preference for child rearing. Not all men necessarily have that preference. One of my close friends, he's a primary caregiver in his arrangement with his kid. And that's something that I would sort of seek out for my family if we decide to have a kid, is I look and go, well, my eyesight's not super great. I probably have lower earning potential than my wife, so I should be the one that stays at home. That is a fact, and that sort of goes against the data that he's presented as a fact. And the second thing. The third one's particularly egregious when he talks about ethnic groups having a different propensity for crime in the statistics. Again, is that something that is socialized in relation to the environment that people are experiencing as they're growing up, or is that ethnic groups that are creating that? I think it's pretty clear that it's not ethnic groups that actually lead to crime. It's actually socioeconomic factors that come into that. And we can look at the disproportionate amount of Indigenous people in Australia who actually end up in the justice system. And we can probably look at the socioeconomic factors that lead to that, where they have lower access to things like education, they have lower access to job opportunities, they have lower access to even basic things like internet and water and electricity, depending on where their communities are located. And to reduce that down to that statement, I think is pretty bad and should be a controversial statement that deserves to be challenged, because it simplifies complex situations that lead to simple answers to complex systems that enable bigotry. And that is the appeal of the alt-right and the pipeline to the alt-right, is that people experience and people feel that something is wrong. This is something I'm stealing from H-Bomber Guy. Like his video on what's it called? It's the Flat Earth one. A reasonable response, a measured response to Flat Earth, and he points out that like we all feel like something's wrong with society. We all feel like there's something wrong with the way things are. Things aren't fair. Things don't happen for good reasons. The right, and particularly the alt-right, will come up and say very simply, look at the statistics. Black people commit more crime. They are the ones that are making society bad. We need a white ethno-state. That's what they will say. It's a simple answer to a complex problem, and it leads to basically saying something completely racist, bigoted, and wrong, because it goes deeper than that. It's actually society is unfair and society doesn't treat people fairly, and we don't have systems set up that actually support people when they need support, and we need to fix that. Instead, it's like, no, it is this group of people you don't like. They're the ones that are causing it. It is the gay people that are ruining the family unit that is sacred. You know, Dave Rubin, which we talked about earlier before as well. You know, him having 2 kids to Martin Isles is a deviation from the societal prescription of what it means to have kids and how kids should grow up, and therefore it's going to cause damage and cause harm. That's easy to say. It's easy to say, well, I had a mum and a dad, therefore everyone should have a mum and a dad, otherwise they're not going to be good. But it's more complex than that. And yeah. Well, we haven't convinced me why controversial debates are needed. They've convinced me why specific debate topics are needed to ensure that we talk about the actual issue, because you'd want to debate about men and women having different preferences when it comes to life choices. You'd want people to very definitely know whether they're talking about whether it's acceptable to stop at, well, yes, they answer different things on vocational surveys, therefore they have different preferences. No, the debate's about whether that's socialized or whether that's genetic. That's what you'd have to have a reasonable debate that actually is a meaningful debate. That's where you'd have to sort of set the level, I think, at that's sort of the turning point, right? Whether it's genetic or socialized, it doesn't matter. If you go to the higher level and just go, well, women do have different preferences at the moment. Well, we don't know if that's because they were raised by people with, anyway.
Americans is about 7 or 8 times higher than it is among European Americans. And terrorism, go to the Global Terrorist Database and you find that worldwide the overwhelming majority of suicide terrorist acts are committed by Islamist extremist groups. Now, if you've never heard these facts before and you stumble across them or someone mentions them, it is possible to come to some extreme conclusions, such as that women are inferior, that African Americans are naturally violent, that we all ought to
so maybe he's going to make the points that I just made,
and do away with all regulation and social safety nets, that most terrorism in this country is the fault of Muslims. Now, these are unwarranted conclusions because for each one of these facts, there are very powerful counterarguments for why they don't license racism and sexism and anarcho-capitalism and so on. The fact that men and women aren't identical has no implications for whether we should discriminate against women for a number of reasons. One of them is for any traits in which the sex is different, the 2 distributions have enormous amounts of overlap so that you can't draw a reliable conclusion about any individual from group averages. Number two, the principle of opposition to racism and sexism is not a factual claim that the sexes and races are indistinguishable in every aspect. It's a political and moral commitment to treat people as individuals as opposed to prejudging them by the statistics of their group. Third, we know that some of the statistical generalizations about races and sexes change over time. So what is true now may not necessarily be true in 10 or 20 years. So these are all reasons why you can believe that the sexes are different and be a very strong feminist. Why you can believe that differences between the races exist and be very strongly opposed to any form of racism. In the case of, say, rates of violent crime, it used to be, go back 100 years, the rate of violent crime among Irish Americans was far higher than among other ethnic groups. That obviously changed. There's no reason that that can't change in the case of current racial differences. In the case of terrorism, the majority of domestic terrorism is committed by right-wing extremist groups, not by Islamic groups within this country. And of course, through much of its history, Islam was far more enlightened than Christendom. There was no equivalent of the Inquisition. There was no equivalent of the wars of religion in the classical history of Islam. And finally, in the case of the fact that capitalism is really a better system than Marxism, every successful capitalist society has regulation, has a social safety net. And in fact, some of the countries with the strongest social safety nets are also the countries that are most friendly, that are most market friendly, that have the greatest degree of economic freedom. So these are all reasons why you can believe all of these and not necessarily drift toward extremist positions. In fact, why you can be a progressive, a centrist, a liberal, even a leftist, and believe all of these.
Even a leftist.
Because you're exposed not only to the facts, but how to put them in context. Now, let's say that you have never even heard anyone mention these facts. The first time you hear them, you're apt to say, number one, the truth has been withheld from me by universities, by mainstream media. And moreover, you will be vindicated when people who voice these truths are suppressed, shouted down, assaulted. All the more reason to believe that the left, that the mainstream media, that universities can't handle the truth. So they get vindicated over and over again. But worst of all, you're never exposed to the ways of putting these facts.
I don't understand the position here that his understanding is that like the okay, I get inoculation to bad arguments is a good idea, 100%. Like if you don't hear the counterpoints to arguments, then the arguments can be more persuasive, right? That makes sense, right? That's intuitive. The idea that you need to be exposed to those arguments being made in good faith, like about differences between the sexes, difference between the races, like to need to hear that earnestly being proposed, as opposed to being able to hear simply the complex truth as it stands. I'm not, we're near the end of the video, and I haven't heard the reason why, apart from you need to hear it. But why do you have to hear it when it's being presented by someone that is, upfront in being like, yes, women and men have different roles in society, and that's why we should have different propensity of women to men in whatever role I think is more appropriate, versus someone that's like, well, no, the difference between men and women is actually on an individual level hard to distinguish, and we should treat them equally and let them make decisions. Like, why do those two things need to be proposed as debates? The weakness is going to be that debates have a large level of reliance on the charisma of the person providing the argument in terms of who's going to sway undecided people more reliably than someone else. There can be someone with super awesome positions that are consistent, that are researched, that are well founded by studies and evidence, and they could be someone that's not super persuasive. They could be nervous. They could have a sort of a low impact in terms of their presence in the debate versus someone that is super confident, aggressive, and presents themselves in a very convincing manner. Yet they don't have any strong positions or evidence or foundations for their claims. Does he pick it up in the end?
Into context so they don't lead to racism and sexism and extreme forms of anarcho-libertarianism. So the politically correct left is doing itself an enormous disservice when it renders certain topics undiscussable, especially when the facts are clearly behind them, because they leave people defenseless the first time they hear them. Against the most extreme and indefensible conclusions possible. If they were exposed, then the rationale for putting them into proper political and moral context could also be articulated, and I don't think you would have quite the extreme backlash.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
I don't understand the position there that the radical left is not arming people with the truths behind the statistics that are being misused by the alt-right. Pretty much everything I've learned when it comes to worker the benefits of having a union, right? So let's take an example that he hasn't used that I think would sort of fit this paradigm he wants to suggest. So his suggestion is that let's take the idea of whether unions are a good or a bad thing. And let's say someone has no understanding of what the impacts of being in a union are. The truth is that if you join a union, let's talk about America specifically, because I think America it's a little bit more of a hot button situation. If you join a union in America, they will shut down your store and you will lose your job and you'll have nothing, because unions just will take away the viability of the operation. The business won't be able to survive, and you'll lose a job. Like, one of my earliest sort of memories of having some sort of conception of a union, it's The Office, the American version of The Office, where there's the talk of the union, and Jan comes down and says, if you guys even think about joining a union, we'll shut down the branch like that. And it's not presented as Jan being the bad guy. In that particular episode, it's Michael's the bad guy for being a coward, where Jan's just giving the honest truth because we'll shut it down. And it's not shown as her being particularly unlikable. At least that's sort of my reading of the text anyway. So it's easy to be like, well, if the left is cancelling that sort of discussion, then people won't be able to respond to that. But the left is talking all about union worker rights and the advantages of unions and how it drives wages up, how it improves working conditions, how we just celebrated not too long ago. I'm not sure if it's celebrated. It's probably celebrated in America, right? I know it's celebrated in the UK, but we just had May Day. Like, Labor Day. We had a day that we actually celebrate the work that unions have done to get us to the point where we have 5-day weeks, where we have 40-hour weeks, where we have things like overtime, where we have things, particularly in Australia, we have things like you can't fire us at will. Those are the reasons why unions are good, because they provide better conditions for the workers, they provide greater wages for the workers, they increase wages even for people not in the union, because there is an upward pressure on companies to pay people more competitively. Now, I didn't need to see a debate between a pro-union and an anti-union person to come to those conclusions. I just needed to be in spaces where they talk about the theory and the studies and the application of their political goals. So I haven't seen why a debate's necessary for that. So I don't need to watch a debate between a white supremacist and someone who is looking for racial equality. Like, I can just listen to the person that has racial equality as their primary goal, and ensure that I'm being swayed by evidenced, researched, studied arguments. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these alt-right extreme views don't actually have any evidence behind them. They're feelings, they're ideological, they're religious in some senses. And yeah, I just don't like. It's not that I don't like debates. I think debates are fine. Like there was a bit of an arc on Twitter a little while ago. There was someone again on the left. I think his name's Noah Sampson. He did a video called "The Problem with Debate Bros," and this might be this might sound like it's me having double standards or something. But I think debate is fine. The ability to debate, the ability to contend with the ideas of someone with whom you disagree is a useful skill. And in the context of debate bros, they're talking more about people that will have people on to have them push back against specific positions that they hold or specific things that they've said. Or they will look at challenging people on a specific thing that they have said. And in that sort of debate bro community, so to speak, and I understand a lot of them do go on modern day debate. But like often they will be more specific in like, hey, I saw this video you did, I disagree, let's have a chat. And there, at least there is a shared understanding generally of what the topic is going to be. And it is more pushing back against bad ideas, whereas modern day debate is creating artificially these situations where people like Richard Spencer have a fucking platform to talk tacitly about abortion. It is 2:30 a.m. I thought it was only about 1:30 a.m. So I need to go to bed because I'm going to be completely wrecked tomorrow at this point. Streaming is a hell of a time portal somehow. So look, it's been good. This has been I don't know if test is correct because I've done live streaming a few times, but look, this is an effort to sort of get a streaming setup that works for YouTube in terms of how my scene is arranged on my desktop and stuff. And I think I finally have something that works for the chat box, which is exciting. So yeah, I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to probably get woken up I'll probably wake up at 10, hopefully. And hopefully a TV shows up out of nowhere. That would be great. Take it easy, Spooky. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening to me ramble. But yeah. Boop.